Well, good morning. I'm Ken Bibrai, and welcome to Coffee with Ken, a thought leadership series at the nexus of business, politics, and social impact. In the news today, the House of Representatives still has no speaker. They're taking applications. Toyota and LG Energy have signed a $3 billion battery supply deal in the United States for EV production. Today's topic is helping people help each other. And we're joined by Margaret Richardson, Chief Corporate Affairs Officer of GoFundMe. Margaret, great to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me.
It's so good to have you on. I mean, I think everybody's heard of GoFundMe, but it was one of these things where we thought like a little bit of a deeper dive in understanding like what exactly you guys do, how you operate. I feel like there's a lot of fundraising sites out there, right? But you guys are a little bit different. Why don't you just take it at the top and just fill us in high level?
Absolutely. Well, GoFundMe is all about helping people help each other. And the idea is whatever you want to fundraise for, whether it's an individual, a cause, or a nonprofit, we have the ability to help basically amateur fundraisers do it well and do it fast. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is the ability for people to be able to tell their own story or the story of whatever it is they're raising money for in their own words, really bringing their expertise to the world. And then then we share those stories with the world via our platform, and other people share those stories, and it becomes this web of help where people are moved and motivated to contribute to things that are making their communities and their friends and families and sometimes strangers' lives better.
And I mean, you have a bit of a background in trust and safety, right? And I think there's always probably a concern or paranoia, like if you're giving something, like, do you trust the platform you're giving through? Do you trust the cause you're giving to? Like, how important is that background of yours and like what you guys are trying to create? And because these things go so fast, right? If somebody has a GoFundMe page, to your point, it can just go viral so quickly, right? I mean, yeah.
That's one of the great things about GoFundMe. We have the ability for people to get their fundraisers up and running quickly, but we have back-end infrastructure, that keeps the money safe and protected until all of the relevant checks have been run. And so people can tell their stories, people can start to raise money, but we do partner with our payments processors. We're not the payments processors ourselves. Sure. But we have human experts inside GoFundMe. We also have technology that's preventing and detecting patterns of fraud and abuse. We also, again, work with our payments processors to know our customers, to prevent any misuse of the platform. And thereby, we are able to offer the first ever guarantee, so that if donors feel like in the rare occasion where something has gone wrong, we'll offer them a refund of their donation. And in those cases where someone has misused the platform, we partner with law enforcement to ensure that that misuse is handled according to the relevant laws. And again, we have a very small situation, very rare situations where that happens, but we're really proud of the ability to prevent and detect, so people can give with high confidence and trust people who they may not know or may not know very well, and really bring their full heart and head into the causes that they're contributing to.
Yeah, and I hate to ask, right? But like I'm sure there is attempts at fraud and people trying to manipulate the process, right? So it's like you have to be on it all the time, I imagine, right?
Well, and we're very vigilant. We have an amazing team that's thinking about this, and we have 13 years of experience. So the ability to be able to prevent and detect is very high. We also, again, that guarantee. So it is our problem to fix, and it's not something our customers need to deal with in the main. And so for us really to try and keep people's focus on the help that they're trying to raise and the help that they're trying to give is a key part of what makes our platform unique and special.
That's amazing. And look, you mentioned law enforcement, right? I'd be remiss without kind of like asking about your own personal background, right? Like you spent years at the Department of Justice and then at Apple and Airbnb, right? Like what was your own kind of career path and background and experiences that you lean on today, now being at GoFundMe?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Well, so I have worked across sectors, and you might say it's sort of the Forrest Gump experience. I just kept showing up and interesting things were happening. But I had the good fortune after graduate school, I was practicing law and was working on criminal justice reform back in the early 2000s. And now it seems very mainstream, but at the time it was a very risky thing. People were very nervous about whether or not allowing criminal justice reform, thinking about revising the rules around criminal records reviews and employment and housing and other things was realistic. And then Senator Obama started talking about being smart on crime rather than tough on crime at a national scale. So I joined that campaign, ran off with the circus, and had the good fortune to work in the administration for Attorney General Eric Holder, and had the opportunity to work on those issues, those hard problems at scale across the federal government, which was really just an incredible opportunity. Following my time in government was had the good fortune of going to Airbnb, where we worked on global policy issues and trust and safety. This is a platform also that is really focused on helping people to connect, to find belonging, to travel the world, and to really understand and immerse themselves in each other's experience. And then after that, I was working on trust and safety issues at Apple, when I got a call from a friend who was on the board of GoFundMe, and they were looking for a new role. They'd never had corporate affairs before. And I had the good fortune to meet Tim Cadogan, our amazing CEO, and he laid out his vision for what this platform could be and the ways in which this global platform of help could continue to expand and deepen into different communities. And I was hooked, and I am very lucky to have an amazing team and amazing colleagues that are focused on this singular goal of making sure people can raise money and get the money to people in need as quickly as possible, and to imagine their world as they would have it be. So it's not just crisis moments or disasters, but it's small businesses or schools that are thinking about their ways in which they can improve. And we have everyday stories of people who decide they're going to do something to make the world better, and we're able to be a part of that. And I'm incredibly grateful for that.
It's funny, I was just thinking back about your Airbnb comment. It's like when you were there, it was kind of before it was cool, right? I mean, it was evolving.
It was always cool. People just didn't know it.
But I mean, I remember being in New York, and like at that time when you were there, like it was controversial. It remains like there's a lot of work there that I'm sure has been formative for this experience, obviously.
Sure,
So
sure. No, and I think one of the things that is really important is being able to engage with people who either don't understand or have had negative experiences. And I think being able to really fix that and acknowledge when there is, I mean, this is key to individual trust as well as organizational and company trust, is being able to recognize when a mistake's been made, being able to remedy it and learn from it. And I think that's one of the things that all companies and all organizations can really do to help to build back trust when there has been an incident that maybe didn't go perfectly.
Yeah. And the breadth of your everyday stories. I mean, it's remarkable, right? Like Damar Hamlin from the Bills gets injured, right? GoFundMe. Maui, Morocco, right? Like Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis. I think it was like the most ever raised for like I Stand With Ukraine, right? Like talk about the breadth of this, right? Like it's fascinating to me that it's not like a platform just for like individuals in the community, but we're talking about like major donors, major efforts, right? Like the breadth seems pretty broad, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that's incredibly powerful. Whatever it is that people are moved to raise money for, we can make it easy. And we do have people who can help to facilitate that, but we also have a lot of just tools and techniques that are available on the platform to do that. There's a story that I love, I was telling you about before, of this young man, Dejuan Strickland in Missouri, and he was moved to raise money for lunch debt. This is a huge problem across the US, where young people who can't afford lunch will find themselves unable to eat during the school day. And he wanted the kids in his school not to have that experience. And so he started a GoFundMe and raised money to pay off the lunch debt for the entire school. And his story moved other people to do the same. And obviously, it would be great if there was a policy fix to all of this. But until there is, the fact that ordinary citizens can decide they're going to do something about problems in their community, or to be able to take that action and to really see those direct results, is incredibly powerful. So as you said, we had almost $60 million raised for Maui, and we have all these incredible outpouring of generosity from people big and small, and we're really fortunate to be able to be that resource for people. We have again, community gardens, small businesses, people deciding that they're gonna we have a lot of actually GoFundMe's for pets and for to try and because people love to support their fur babies, as they sometimes call it. And we really have seen whatever it is that people care about, they can find a way to contribute and to find community in the donations and in the ability to come together in these fundraising moments.
I don't even want to tell people that we met like 20 years ago now, which is like remarkable to think. But one of the things that we learned in grad schools, as I'm sure you remember and appreciate, is this kind of notion of tri-sector competence, right? And that's kind of what we always talk about on the conversations. It's like that part of the Venn diagram where the public sector, private sector, nonprofits come together. And it almost seems like GoFundMe is almost like a grassroots effort, right? If it's like highlighting a school lunch situation, right? Like that's a community philanthropic need kind of meeting, private sector support meeting, kind of a call to action for the public sector, right? I mean, how much momentum do you think can be created from the grassroots on like larger policy challenges that we face on a daily basis, right? Like you come from government as well, right? I mean, we studied public policy together. It fascinates me that this is not just like a philanthropic tool. This is potentially a larger scale public policy vehicle for ideation and kind of causes. So
and experimentation. I mean, I think one of the things that's really powerful is this idea of people coming together about and being able to like sort of speak. It's really community organizing at scale in many ways. It's telling the stories, it's inspiring action. And I think one of the things that is super interesting is that both government and nonprofit see the role of the private sector. I think sometimes there's this false belief that it should be all government, or it should be all nonprofits, or it should be the private sector's role to do certain things. Our big problems and even our small problems really benefit from the best thinking across sectors and being able to understand the language and the behaviors and sometimes the speed of action that's possible within the different sectors is actually enables the very best solution. So one of my colleagues was speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative a few weeks ago, and there was this panel about disaster response and this idea that GoFundMe serves a critical piece of the puzzle because it can go fast. It enables the nonprofits and the government to be able to come in behind and to fill different kinds of needs. And it's often really that filling in of the cracks where there wouldn't be a program at scale, or there wouldn't necessarily be an appropriate government response, but there's still a need and people can tell that story, can get the need. And we're really proud to be a part of that solution.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, and you guys have even created your own philanthropic efforts, right? Like you now have GoFundMe.org, right? Like talk about that. I mean, what is it, like $150 million plus raised, massive funds, causes, grants, like
GoFundMe.org is the key partner for GoFundMe.com. It's a very effective and fast-moving nonprofit. Our funds there are able to move money both to nonprofits, but also to GoFundMe.com campaigns within a charitable class. So, for example, earlier this year, we set up a wildfire fund. We, always hope that these terrible things won't happen, but our the patterns of climate change have shown us that there is a season and sometimes a long season of wildfires. So we set up this fund, we seeded it with money from GoFundMe.com. And so when the Maui wildfire happened, we were able to raise money into that and get it out the door within 30 hours. We were starting to grant to people and organizations and working with communities on the ground. We were able to partner with local officials, local leaders, local, humanitarian people who just stepped up to get that money quickly from donors who were moved by this horrible tragedy, but wanted to see something done as quickly as possible. And so that was an example of us really working in partnership with nonprofits, with government, and we're continuing. I'm glad you brought it up because the needs there are ongoing, and our ability to continue granting really depends on people continuing to stay focused. So often, when the immediate has ended, it can be hard for people to continue to keep that focus. But if we don't, then we're not going to be able to do as much good as we could. So that wildfire fund continues to need everyone's support.
It's wild. And let's talk a little bit more about speed, right? Like it seems like so much of this is driven by speed and technology, right? Like topic du jour is AI and artificial intelligence, right? Like how are you guys using technology to speed up the trust, verification, deployment? Like speed's important, right? Like as you've mentioned, like and talk about tech innovations, right? I mean, you're in California. You guys are a tech company, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, our platform is all about getting people the direct impact as quickly as possible. As I said, though, we do have the back end infrastructure to make sure that people are protected, that the donations are protected, that the beneficiaries are protected. So people can raise money for someone other than themselves, but we do have to get the information from the person who ultimately the money is going to. When there are cases where we do all of the requisite checks and the know your customer, all of the regulatory and procedural checks, policy checks that we need to do before money is released. And again, being able to make sure that people understand what they need to do quickly, and that if there's something missing, a piece of information missing, or that we are very proactive about trying to make sure that those answers are resolved to the greatest extent possible. Obviously, if there are times when people have the need, and then they can't, in a moment where they don't have a bank statement or they don't have the right things, we're trying to work with them to get what they need as quickly as possible and get that money out the door. Again, we do work with a number of vendors and others to try and make sure that our technology is best in class. We also have human experts who are reviewing materials, and that we are constantly looking at the horizon to learn from other companies and other organizations. What do we need to do to keep our platform the most safe and trusted place where to fundraise and to donate?
Got it. Because what I also find fascinating is it's not just causes all the time. It's even individuals, right? Like I remember reading something in Axios that you were quoted in, and it was really like inflation going up and like baby formula being expensive, and people just kind of needing some help in the immediacy, right? For just like life, right? Like, and I
Absolutely.
think things like that kind of also are part of the storytelling and community building, right? Like you're putting people in a position to be their own advocates, to kind of make a call to action and kind of put themselves out there, right? Like
Exactly. And
that's
being
a
able
little
to tell
different than
this.
I think I appreciated at the beginning. That's all. Sorry.
No. It's exactly right. I think we really believe, and I really believe, that people are experts in their own lives, and given the opportunity to tell their stories, there is real power in that. There is something that, we as human beings are wired for connection. Brene Brown always says this.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorites, and talks about how the ability to tell your story is by itself an act of empowerment. I think for us to then be able to have those stories solicit people's empathy, and solicit the contributions that people are then able to make, and change that circumstance. Someone's putting themselves out there and saying, there's something I want to be different, and somebody else saying, I will help you make that be different. I will make it better. I will join you in building this community garden. I will join you in helping raise money for our mutual friend who's going through some kind of medical treatment. I'll join you in helping pay off the school lunch debt for kids I don't even know.
Yeah.
That is a real testament to the power of community and the ability for all of us to do something, even when we feel like the problems may be overwhelming.
How do you interact with large donors, foundations? I mean, are you now a resource for kind of what you would expect to be organizations that have a ton of people that do this for them and figure it out, right? Like,
Sure.
sometimes I think people are caught off guard with like even family offices, like they don't necessarily have that infrastructure. Sometimes there's not a sophisticated plan for philanthropy, right? Like, how do you guys maybe step in or advise or even interact with folks like that? Like when you see like an Ashton Kutcher like using GoFundMe, I find that fascinating.
Absolutely. Well, so we have a couple of different ways. .org is a way in which people can contribute if they want to contribute to the funds that we're able to host there. We also have a software as a service division called Classy that is a fundraising service for nonprofits, and we are seen as thought leaders in the nonprofit space. We work really closely with the Classy customers and the sector more generally to make sure that we're keeping on top of the trends and helping people to understand the evolution of the way people are giving, but also the way that fundraising is evolving. And one of the things that we see across Classy and GoFundMe, that sort of individual as well as organizational fundraising, is that people really want to feel connected and they want to see the impact. And so being able to tell those stories of help delivered and the ways in which we are able to share what we see as really powerful examples of that with the nonprofit sector is, I think, incredibly instructive. And also we get a lot of input from the nonprofit sector saying, of course, these especially big organizations see the power of people deciding that they're going to raise money for those organizations through GoFundMe. And so we want to make it as easy and seamless for however people want to raise money and to get that money to the organizations doing this incredible systems change work. At the same time, we're getting the money to people who may have an immediate need that is, personal or individual in nature.
Interesting. So two things you mentioned just to tease out a little bit, right? Future philanthropy, like this is evolving. Like where are we in 5 years, right? Like does every nonprofit have you enabled on their site? Like are foundations, does it just continue as is? Like is there like a 5-10 year kind of vision of where we're headed with philanthropy?
I hope that people will continue to remain engaged and to participate. I think what we see is when people are participating, they continue to participate. And whether it's volunteering or donating or being able to share information about organizations and fundraisers that they care about, those people are more likely to participate again and to be able to stay engaged. And so being able to make sure that we're deepening that engagement, we're not sort of out, there's a great documentary right now called Uncharitable that talks about the sector and the ways in which the sector has been held, or in some cases to unrealistic and unfair criticism. And I think what we're trying to think about is, what is it that makes our community stronger? And the participation, that ability to donate, that willingness to be there for one another, whether it's in an organization or an individual capacity, is what I think is going to keep us strong and thriving and build our communities and our social fabric be strengthened as a result.
Fascinating. And then the other kind of thing was trends, right? Like I think it's fascinating the data you probably just inherently get without even asking for it or hearing about it, right? Like if you kind of track Google stuff, right, you can see, okay, what are people searching today? What are they feeling? What are they looking at, right? Like I imagine causes that are created over a month period, like you can kind of connect these dots behind the scenes about like where need exists. Like how do you absorb that data? Do you use it? Do you think about it? Do you tell a story about it? Like I just I imagine you probably are sitting on like a wealth of kind of topics. So
absolutely. Well, I think our goal is ultimately to be a resource and to make sure that we're sharing those trends to the extent that we can. I think one of the things that I think is so fascinating, having been in government, in politics, is, there's tons of polling, right? But if you look at what people are actually spending their money on, that is so much higher fidelity in terms of what people care about. There's the old saying, like, show me your budget, I'll show you what you care about, or show you your values. I think that is something that we could absolutely be doing more. I also think the reality is that helping communities to understand the maybe less visible needs is one of the things that is really powerful. One of the things we're also really proud of is helping communities to see the incredible generosity within their communities. We just did this event with Marietta, Georgia, which was last year was the most generous city by per capita in the United States. And our CEO actually today is in Ireland, which was the most generous country per capita.
wow.
And this ability for people to see that side of their neighbors and to feel like they are a part of something that they didn't even realize, that they are the most generous place. There's a real sense of pride that we get from that, people get from that, and that we're able to reflect back to them that there's even more goodness than they realized. And I think that kind of data and those trends, we always put it out at the end of the year, but I also, throughout the year, we definitely share stories as we see them. And, again, I think there's always more that we could be doing to help people to see themselves and to see their communities in new and different lights.
So talk about global real quick, right? CEOs in Ireland, like how is your global expansion going? Growth, engagement, where does that all go?
So we have,
and how does your job kind of then get harder when you're thinking about different countries and different, regulations, et cetera?
Well, the good news is I think this idea of helping people help each other is really universal. And the idea of being able to work with fundraisers and people who want to fundraise for organizations and for individuals resonates across countries. I think one of the things that we've seen is as our presence has grown, as our name recognition has grown, we've really democratized this idea of fundraising so that it isn't just something that people feel like, oh, well, that's for other people to do, or, donating is for other people to do, but people really take that same power and empowerment to take on opportunities in their own countries. I was in Italy last year, or a few months ago. I can't remember the exact dates. And we met with a bunch of community organizers and campaign organizers who had done a range of different fundraisers. And we also were meeting with a former mayor who had raised money during the pandemic for his community because there wasn't the resources. And those moments where people decide they're going to take action are really universal. And I think one of the things that is really exciting is being able to share the stories across geography, across countries, and be able to understand there is really more that we have in common. The reality is that we absolutely could be and should be available everywhere that people have the desire to fundraise and the desire to help each other. And my hope is that will be true down the road.
That's amazing. So as a parting kind of question, what advice do you have for people who are creating their own pages, right? Like what makes, and I think part of it is the storytelling, obviously, but like what have you seen as kind of being the source of the most successful efforts out there? And is there a general call to action, right? Like, should people be going to your website to look at what's new and out there, or just keeping an eye out of what their community, what's happening there? Like, is it or not? Yeah.
No, thank you for asking. I think, my most immediate call to action would be the continued attention on issues like Maui and other places where we have ongoing needs. And so when things fall from the headlines, just remember there is still the opportunity to contribute and to help. I think for us to be able to continue to be that trusted source for people to fundraise. And I think the advice I would give to people who are thinking about doing it is just get it out there. And then when you have it out there, share it with as many people as possible. And even people who aren't able to contribute, ask them to share it, because that ability to get the word out and to have that social validation is a huge part of what we see successful fundraisers do. And then once those fundraisers have started, being able to update them, again, continuing to share and ask other people to share on any medium, whether it's through text or email or social media platforms, all of those are really powerful, and keeping it in your network's mind is the key to success.
I mean, what a fun and impactful job you have. I mean, I'm really for a living, but this is pretty transformative. I mean, it's amazing.
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, look,
thank you
Margaret,
so much for having me. I really appreciate your willingness to talk about this and the power of your platform.
Now,
thank you.
It's only rivaled by the power of your platform, Margaret. Margaret Richardson, GoFundMe. What a treat. So great to see you again after all these years, and amazing to kind of get the behind the scenes of how this in practice works, and the real challenges from a trust and safety standpoint, and a speed and a need perspective, and honestly just maintaining the commitment beyond the headlines for these causes. So thanks for being here. Everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. You can visit coffeewithken.com to watch this again or catch up on past sessions. We're also on YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Google Play. Our next conversation will be on October 18th with Eric Gertler, the CEO of U.S. News and World Report. Until then, great seeing you guys. Thanks.